Hola mi gente, MsMalcolmHughes here. Welcome back. Today we are coming to discuss the book Heavy, an American Memoir by Kiese Laymon. Let's get into it. All right, so today, guys, we are going to talk about Heavy by Kiese Laymon. I'm going to talk about the pros, I'm going to talk about the cons, and I'm going to talk about whether or not I think that you all should read it. So jumping right in, let's first start with looking at the cover page and then talking about the full title. I love how in your face it is with just the word heavy. It comes heavy. I like that it's going down this way, as in it descends. And then also I love that it says an American memoir, because Kiese is a black man from the South. He will always say that and claim that. But I love that it isn't like just a memoir. In saying an American memoir, there's emphasis on that comes throughout the book, because what does that mean to have an American memoir, and how does that impact this writing? So I love that. It's something I wanted to point out at the onset, but it's something that I will come back to as I discuss this book. So anyone who's read this will tell you that the title is appropriately named because this is a heavy read. But one thing I love about Kiese is I love his writing. He's a writer who I feel has these deep and complex ideas, but I love the way he writes about them, and I love the way he grapples with them. And so he often talks about revision, and that comes up because that is something that is taught to him by his mother. But we could see the revision work here in writing sentences again and again until they get to a point of what you feel is near perfection, or at least something near good, as he would say, something that's okay, but just improvement over time. And I wanted to point that out again at the onset because it's something that'll come up again and again throughout the book. Another thing I would say, this is not a long read, not heavy, but it feels heavy. The heft of it feels heavy even just in your hands as you begin to read. Immediately from the onset, you realize that this will not be a light read. It took me time to get through this. I had to force myself to just barrel through and get to the end, because there are moments when I had to stop and reflect, sometimes maybe in a couple of tears, and just think about in relation to my own life. And it's one of those. So I do want to say that at the onset, it's one of those where you may need to take your time. And when I say I love Kiese's writing, this is a review in which I will share bits of his writing so that you can all better understand what I mean. And so one early example. All right, and this is from the opening chapter titled Ben, and this is what it says. Ain't nothing in the world worse than looking at your children drowning, knowing ain't nothing you can do because you're scared that if you get to trying to save them, they might see that you can't swim either. But I'm okay. You hear me? And this is a conversation between him and his grandmother. And just he is trying to get honest answers out of her. And it's hard, but in the complexities, in between the lies, you get moments of truth. And it's just like one of those profound moments that hit you. And just the concept of ain't nothing you can do because you're scared that if you get to trying to save them, they might see that you can't swim either. And as children, we look up to adults so much as if they're capable of anything. And how world-shattering would it be for children to see that the elders and the adults in their lives are incapable of saving them, and they don't have the skills that they need. That's something that we all, I think, grapple with as we grow and we get to understand life, and we give our parents and guardians grace, or we hold them accountable, but we really do reckon with the idea of they didn't have everything that they needed, so therefore they couldn't give me everything that I needed. Or did they try enough? So these are these are just some things that this book calls to the forefront. Listen, a reflection will happen throughout. And so here's another excerpt from the same portion. And this is Kiese reflecting. Like you, Grandma beat the worst of white folk and the mean machinations of man every day she was alive. But y'all taught me indirectly that unacknowledged scars accumulated in battles won often hurt more than battles lost. Listen, I have this tattoo here. Oh. It's the Basquiat crown. And if you know the Basquiat crown, it has a scar going through it. And what he just said is what this tattoo means to me. It's someone who's battle proven, battle worn. You've proven that you have gone through the fire, you've gone through battle, but you're still here. Your crown is still intact. But what do all those scars from battle, how do those impact you over time? And I love reckoning with that and reflecting on that. And that happens throughout this work. And listen, sometimes you win, but at what cost, right? And is the winning worth it? That's a question that my friends and I reflect on all the time. Is what we sacrifice to get to where we're going in life worth it in the end? And everyone has their own answers and their own reasons and rationales for answering the way that they do. But it's something that I want us all to reflect on, and that's something that is a present and threading question throughout this book. Again, with Kiese's writing, I love here how he never says he was writing the truth, right? You can take away that hopefully he is, but all he says is that he wanted to write a lie. But in saying that I wanted to write a lie, the opposite of that isn't I am writing the truth, right? I'm writing less of a lie than I originally intended to write. And that is something interesting to think about, because I've watched a number of Kiese Laymon interviews. I could watch that man or just listen to that man speak about anything. I love his brain. I love the way it works. And I love the way he articulates his ideas and grapples with them in a very honest and vulnerable type of way. And the same thing happens with his writing. And so another thing I like, there will be a lot of raving here. There's a lot of likes that I have. Nothing is perfect. There are a lot of likes. And so I'm going to give it the credit that it deserves, because I think that Kiese is a gift and a true talent. And I think that he's someone I wish that people read more. So this is something that I thought was very profound and heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. And so here he talks about the discomfort. So we see Kiese at different points in life, right? And that's what a memoir is. You're taking key moments of your life and you're writing about them to tell this story. And so we see him younger in Mississippi at a friend's house, and he doesn't agree with everything that's happening to the young girls there. He doesn't do anything to stop it at the time, but he's reckoning with that. But he talks about here of something that young black boys are taught about young black girls. And it's something that holds true for this nation in general, and this is what it is. Up until that point, I had never really imagined Layla being in one emergency, much less emergencies. Part of it was Layla was a black girl, and I was taught by big boys who were taught by big boys who were taught by big boys that black girls would be okay no matter what we did to them. That is so true and so gut-wrenching, because it's true, right? In this nation, even in the black community, we are taught, like black women are super women, and strong black woman, and we don't break and we don't bend, and you could do anything to them and they'll be fine and they'll persevere, and we will not. The trauma takes its toll, right? And so I love that he talks about that here, because it is something within our community and this nation that we have to grapple with, right? So I love the concept of an American memoir, because he talks about it often of just like, as we're striving, we're also in this American system and we're impacted therein, and we've been here for a long time, so we are American in our culture and values and how are we grappling with all of it. But that is just a reflection of a bigger problem as well of, on one hand, yes, listen to black women, absolutely. But on the other hand, also, it's not on black women to save everybody, right? And so dealing with the complexity of all of that just in those lines has bigger implications. And I love that about this work. Another thing that I like that we see often is that his mother is a stickler about people speaking standard American English properly. But that will not save her son. And she thinks that it will. She thinks that it'll be a form of protection for him. But we know that throughout history, that isn't the case. And as we navigate throughout this work, Kiese speaks to that as well, of like some of the means that people put in place in order to protect young black children from white power and those in powerful positions attacking the institutionalization. Policing the black bodies, right? The medical system, like academics, all of it is, if you are excellent in every way, then that will repel and protect you. And that's just not the case. There's been so much discourse recently about Black excellence, and does that actually benefit us? So definitely tap into those conversations if you haven't. And by all means, I think that we should all be our most excellent selves. But we have been excellent sometimes to a fault on ourselves, against ourselves, when so often you see like white mediocrity. But we have to be excellent against mediocrity and still not be seen in the same way. That's how it's been a lot historically, and it still happens to this day. And so are we serving ourselves, right? How are we making sure that we're okay, right? Are the means that we've used as a form of protection actually beneficial to us, or have they done more harm than good? And are they the ones that we want to continue to use moving forward? So a lot to grapple with. A lot of that happens here as well. So Kiese has talked about this a lot in interviews, but the situation with him and his mom and the abuse, it's a lot. It's a lot. He talks about how some people have asked him, why you still talk to her? But family is tricky and it's complex, and that's his mother. So like, that's just an interesting question to ask someone. But the dynamic they're in, you know, she wrote a response to this, so it's definitely worth checking out. I'll link it below. And you know, she grapples with a bit of where she was in life. She was young, and what she needed, and why she couldn't offer him certain things. And so it's interesting, all of it, just the generational traumas and pains and trying to heal, right? And so this is a work like raw honesty, or as he says, as much as it can be, because it still goes through a number of hands of editors before it gets to us. So even though he tries to give us something pure, it's probably not as pure as he had desired. And some things he did take out at the request of his mother, the request of some folks whose stories, they might not want their stories in here, even though it's a part of his story. They didn't want them to see themselves in his work because of pain and trauma that he may have caused them in the past. So, but he tried to give us something pure. And so this book, there's a lot here. Even with the editing and what's been removed, there's still so much here to unpack and to just sit with. So as Kiese is a writer, raised in the South, Mississippi to be specific, you know, he talks about the great white writers that he was told to read and he was supposed to emulate. And I loved him grappling with that even from a young age. I like that he was able to question things. And one example is Eudora Welty. All right, so there are some excerpts about her that I want to share from his writing. And he says, if we could understand historical context, we can understand how Eudora Welty could create fully developed, unreliable white protagonists who treated partially developed Black objects like niggers. I felt the weight of historical context, quirky racism, and bad real racism in that 8th grade classroom. But I also felt something else I was embarrassed to admit. I felt a tug toward the interior of Welty's stories. Even though there were bold boundaries between my imaginations and Welty's, when she started Why I Live at the P.O. with the sentence, I was getting along fine with Mama, Papa Daddy, and Uncle Rondo until my sister Stella Rondo just separated from her husband and came back home again. I didn't just feel an intimate relationship to Welty's text. I felt every bit of Jackson and really every bit of Mississippi you taught me to fear. Welty didn't know a lick about Mississippi Black folk, but she knew enough about herself to mock white folk in the most ruthlessly petty ways I'd ever read. You and Grandmama taught me white folks were capable of anything and not to be provoked. But Welty reminded me of what my eyes and ears taught me. White folk were scared and scary as hell. So scared, so scary. The words scared and scary weren't scared or scary enough to describe them. I didn't hate white folk. I didn't fear white folk. I wasn't easily oppressed or even annoyed by white folk, because even before I met actual white folk, I've met every protagonist, antagonist, and writer of all the stories I ever read in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Yeah. I also like that, like, my and Kiese paths have crossed a lot. My family is originally from Mississippi. I also spent a little bit of time at Jackson State. He talks a bit about his family living in Hyattsville, Maryland. I lived in Hyattsville, Maryland. And so that was just also interesting, like, the just black folk, right? Even thinking about the migration and how our paths can sometimes trace each other. But his time in Maryland that he spent in Hyattsville with his mother, I think it's interesting because there's an interaction between him and his mom and a police officer. And this is also during the time where she teaches him about the importance of revision. And so this is the time where she's getting to be a scholar. She's there doing university work, and they're having their best relationship because for the first time, she's never worried about food and survival. But also there's still this external force of power that's exerted on them when they are stopped by the police, and you get to see just how so many things are happening at the same time and how all of these are impacting Kiese. So on the one hand, they're having freedom and liberation because they are solid. Financially, they're in a good place. But she's also teaching him how he always has to be better. How in revision, I think about that impact on his life, right? And I'll say that because it's the relationship to his body, because heavy also has to do a lot with his body. This is like a triple entendre, the word heavy in its work, but also his relationship to his body. So she teaches him to read and write better and write better and write better. And I think of that often with his life as well, just the idea of revising until he's his best self. And he talks a bit about Obama in here, like the way that he talks, the way that he speaks, the way he carries himself. He felt as if that was the type of son his mother wanted him to be. And that is because she wanted him to be safe. And so what I write here, I say her teaching him about revision is interesting because she says it's the most important thing, but it can be construed that she's also talking about conformity when she says revision. And writing is to be precise, but it's also a double entendre for life and how he has to navigate it in order to keep his body safe from police and those in power. And so I think that in addition to all of the other painful things that have happened to Kiese, and he talks about a lot of them here, there should have been a trigger warning at the beginning of this video. There are multiple forms of abuse: physical, sexual, intellectual, emotional, power struggles. There's so much here, so there should be a trigger warning going into this. And that's why I said heavy, multiple meanings, because he also talks about heavy being for Black people and how he collectively wants us to be heavy, and that's to be grounded in our power. And I love the idea of that as well, but this is also heavy in the sense of the body and the weight, and it's also heavy in a sense of like emotionally heavy. There's so much that he talks about that I love. So at one point he's dating a white girl, and then he also talks about the emotions of having sex with someone who isn't Black and not wanting his mother to think that she has raised someone who hated her. So that was a lot to unpack as well. But then also his relationship with that same woman or young girl after the beating of Rodney King and how that shifts and changes. And so there's a racial component that is throughout here. Power on multiple levels, and what does it all mean in interactions throughout just American history and just on all of us. I also really liked his explanation for why he believed Anita Hill versus Clarence Thomas, and I actually want to read that here. The room we walked into was the same room where Donnie G and I watched Clarence Thomas talk about experiencing a high-tech lynching when Anita Hill told on him for sexually harassing her. I knew Clarence Thomas was lying because there was no reason in the world for Anita Hill to lie, and because I had never met one older man who treated women the way he wanted to be treated. Every older man I knew treated every woman he wanted to have sex with like a woman he wanted to have sex with. Clarence Thomas seemed as cowardly as every older man to me. Listen, Kiese talks about studying feminisms and women's studies in college, and some of that definitely comes out here, but he also talks about how that also allowed him to be a more potent abuser, having that knowledge. Like on one hand, it gave him verbiage and words and terms to explain what had been happening to him, his lived experiences, right? He had terminology for it. But he also talked about how that also just equipped him to be a more potent abuser. There's so much here, and I love the complexity of it all, right? Because none of us are one thing. And even sometimes when you're doing something for the right reasons, the end result can be negative. And so there's so much here, y'all. There's so much here. These are the pros, okay? I'm telling you what I love about the work. And so following that same theme, I do want to talk a little bit about the relationship between men, women, and power from his writing. I wanted to write martial songs, but I didn't understand what a race of men looked like, or why Margaret Walker ended the poem hoping a group of men would rise and take control. A group of men hadn't written for my people. A group of men hadn't told me to write to and for my people. Most groups of men I knew were good at destroying women and girls who would do everything not to destroy them. If a group of men happened to rise and take control, I didn't know where you or Margaret Walker would be when those men got mad at you. And there he's reading a poem titled For My People by Margaret Walker. I have a video up about that and a little excerpt about who Margaret Walker was. So definitely check that out on the channel. But so he says there, he's like, you know, she ends it with that line of wanting men to rise up. And he's like, I don't know if that's a good thing. They haven't done what I've seen these women do. They haven't done what I've seen Margaret Walker do and write this beautiful piece, galvanizing and capturing the experience of her people. And if they were in positions of power over these women, I'm not sure that they would do the things that these women would do to protect them and love them and make sure that they're okay. And I think that's such an important conversation that we all need to be having always. And you know, like just culturally, that comes up all the time. Black women often feel like they show up for black men, and black men don't return that same energy. And so I feel like that captures that here. And I'm not saying that that's the truth. It's a part of the conversation, right? I know amazing men. I'm grateful for that. But there is some validity to it, right? And so we have to grapple with all of it. And so, again, the complexities of life, right? I like that as he gets older and navigates his relationship with his mother or the lack thereof, and her having her own addictions and him having his own addictions, and how he will acknowledges that he was in love with his mother and how he had a very hard time saying no to her, seeing the truth as it was. But there's one point in time where he talks about that he wants the best for her, but he also doesn't want her to return to where he is. And so just like that's always interesting and complex, those family dynamics with harm and trauma when it's actually been done. And so I'm going to read a little bit of that. You smiled, I smiled. You waved, I waved. You fake yawned, I fake yawned. You disappeared, I was free. And this is him dropping his mother off to the airport as she's heading to Boston. I wanted you to be safe in Boston and get your work done. I wanted you to finally find healthy, affirming love and all that stuff they sang about on the adult contemporary radio stations. I also didn't want you to ever come back to Mississippi if I was there. I do like the honesty that I feel and the vulnerability that he shares in this work. And I cannot say that or emphasize that enough. And so it's the relationship with his grandmother, the relationship with his mother, the relationship with also his father. And it's so interesting, the relationship he has with his dad and the final take he has with his dad. You know, he talks a lot about, they're saying that men need to be present in the home. And we put a lot of emphasis on men being present in the home. But he's like, we need emotionally men to show up, right? Presence is not enough. And so I like how, even though he didn't have this great relationship with his father, and we don't get a lot about him in this work, I like how the one time we do see his father visiting him, I like how Kiese collages his father's life in a few lines while his father is sleeping. He's like, I see him win. And so I thought that that was beautiful as well. Just like, I see him at this age, I see him at this age, I see him at this age. And we learned so much of his father during that time. So I thought that that was a lovely style of writing to give an overview of someone we hadn't had a lot of time with without dedicating a lot of the book to that character or to that person. And then in the end, when it all comes together and Kiese is trying to deal with his demons of addiction to gambling and how he's run his body down, quite literally. He was heavy, he lost a lot of weight, but he talks about how there's one line that I think is beautiful. He's like, you know, I could either be over this amount of weight or under this amount of weight. And he couldn't tell as whatever his body was, because being so heavy or being so slim were both a form of him trying to control and damaging his body. And the ending is haunting. It definitely sticks with you. We do see him grappling with romantic love and the complexities therein, but also trying to make amends and peace with his mother after a time of separation and trying to be honest, but still lying in that. And I do want to read the excerpt where he's talking about to us, the readers, specifically to Black folk. And I want to unpack that a little bit. And also his what he says to his mother. So let's read that and then unpack it. We will find churches, synagogues, mosques, and porches committed to the love, liberation, memories, and imagination of Black children. We will share. We will find psychologists committed to the love, liberation, memories, and imagination of Black children. We will share. We will find teachers committed to the love, liberation, memories, and imagination of Black children. We will share. We will find healers committed to the love, liberation, memories, and imagination of Black children. We will share. We will find art communities, cooperatives, curriculums, justice, and labor organizations committed to the love, memories, and imagination of Black children. We will share. We will remember, imagine, and help create what we cannot find. Or, is it possible we will not remember? We will not imagine. We will not share. We will not swing back. We will not organize. We will not be honest. We will not be tender. We will not be generous. We will do what Americans do. We will abuse like Americans abuse. We will forget like Americans forget. We will hunt like Americans hunt. We will hide like Americans hide. We will love like Americans love. We will lie like Americans lie. We will die like Americans die. We did not ever have to be this way. We will not ever have to be this way. I wanted to write a lie. You wanted to read a lie. I wrote this to you instead because I am your child and you are mine. You are also my mother and I am your son. Please do not be mad at me, Mama. I am just trying to put you where I bend. I am just trying to put us where we bend. And that comes from that where I bend and where we bend. When he was talking to his grandmother at one point, she was saying, I'm just trying to put you where I've been. But what he heard was bend. And I love the double entendre of that because it's where I've been, but also been in the form of body. And all of this is also rooted in the body and what the body remembers and the harm that we do to the body. And so this is what we have, right? This is what we're dealing with, the powerfulness of it, the profoundness, the prolificness of it. And these are all of the prose. I love Kiese's writing. That's what carries this. It is a memoir. So we have collective moments of his life and trying to tell us the story of his body, right? But also larger than just his body and the impact of all of it on him and on us and on his family and us as a nation, right? Not easy stuff to write, not easy stuff to grapple with, not easy stuff to navigate and try to figure out. So much happening here. And so what I love about this work is the writing. I love the way that we can vividly see things. I love the way that we can feel things deep within us as he's talking and sharing these human experiences. I love this work. I love the way that he grapples with ideas. I love the way that he talks about trauma. I love the way that he expresses his joys. I love that he is vulnerable and trying to express all of who he's been and what has made him who he is, right? Even in the pieces that he leaves out. This is what I love about this work. No work is perfect. So let's talk about the cons, right? I do feel as if there's a lot of ideas that you're trying to compress. Again, memoirs are selected moments of a life, right? So trying to make those cohesive and flow easily isn't something that's easily done. So at points, I do feel like sometimes the transitions are choppy. I don't always feel like they're as seamless, right? It sometimes takes us a minute to get situated in where we are in his life and the story. Now, this isn't anything against the book. A lot of the trauma here was hard to read, right? Kiese's mother abusing him physically was tough. Right? Even though she had good intentions, it was tough. And she talks about that as also like getting out some of her own stresses and frustrations. And one thing she says in her letter is, in my warped imagination, I would have been a habitually good mother had your daddy and I remained married. Your daddy had strengths in my weak places and I had strengths in some of his. This is just my way of saying that while not all moms need good husbands and daddies to help rear and give children sustaining values, I did. Alone, my maturity and especially my ability to manage cash, finances, and exude patience were grossly insufficient. And so it was tough. So that was hard to read. No con against the book, just difficult to read. Another difficult thing was, when sometimes people don't have tools, they can't give you what they don't have. But I kind of wish that his family would have been there more for him, especially with his weight going up and down and what he was suffering through. And I wish that they would have been able to tap in and support him more in that. Another thing, not a con, but I said, trauma really runs deep. Because at one point, he had found someone like his abuser, and his abuser in this moment was his mother. And so I said, now he done found a girlfriend who is brilliant and attractive and physically abusing him. Just like who? His mama. Who? And that's from my notes, and that's hard. That's hard. And so what I the last thing I wrote is I said, it's not a flawless work, but nothing is when you're trying to compound your life into key moments in time. Kiese is a brilliant writer, but sometimes the jumps in time feel clunky, especially early on. But eventually I was able to find my way, and the book was able to find its speed, and it ended up flowing. And so those are my pros and cons for Heavy by Kiese Laymon. Overall, I think the work is brilliant. Kiese has gone on to win numerous awards for this. He's also become a MacArthur Fellow. He's still a professor. He's doing so much. And I think that he deserves that and more. I think that he has gotten a lot of critical acclaim, and culturally, those of us who know adore Kiese because he's just so raw and honest, and he really stands for us. But I do wish that more people read his work. I think that's something I grapple with, is when you're doing the work, when you're creating art for your people, you're writing to and for your people, as Margaret Walker instructed him to. I sometimes find it's only like certain demographics within that who get the work, and I wish that all of us would read and get this work. All of us at every level, we need it. It doesn't feel like a bomb, but it feels like a collective grappling. And sometimes that can be a balm, and that can be a first step on your road to healing. So I think I've raved about this enough. I think in my discussion, you all have probably walked away with where I land on this, but just to make it clear and emphasize it, on my scale of whether you should read now, read when you have time, or read if you want, read it now. Please and thank you. Drop everything else. Read Heavy by Kiese Laymon. Read everything he's written. I have read Long Division. I reviewed Long Division. I do plan to go back and reread it again. I plan on reading it from the opposite direction. It's a book that you could start with either way and end up in a certain spot. So I want to experience it from the point in which I finished. But there's also his work of essays that I am planning to pick up and hopefully read in the very near future. So that is my review of Heavy by Kiese Laymon. Can't recommend it enough. Can't recommend Kiese enough. You'll find a few things linked below, things that I think you should check out from him. So definitely, by all means, read Kiese, listen to Kiese's interviews. He's just like, that's funny because he grappled with being called a good dude, and I wouldn't call him a good dude because I don't know him, but I know he's trying, and I love his mind. So that's it for me, y'all. I'm MsMalcolmHughes, one who believes that books are sometimes better than people. And until the next one, please remember to give time to be kind to each other and to have the very best day of your life on purpose. Peace, odavo, adios. Ciao.